Well, this chapter was a fucking mess, wasn't it? You might say it was one of the worst chapters yet, even though it had the potential to be a lot better, but that's Hiromashima for you. I mean, it's not the first time potential has gone to waste, but the fact that Hiro did it to Acnologia was a bit overkill to me. It wasn't a surprise by any means, we all saw it coming from a mile away, but deep inside you just hope that he's not going to screw up that one fight that everyone has been waiting for, right? Well, he did, and while to some degree it makes sense, it's still not enough to make me say that it was a good fight. Okay, let's go through just what happened in this fight, both on Natsu's end and on Lucy's end, because they're both connected to Acnologia's defeat, which is what I meant by Acnologia's defeat kinda made sense, to some degree at least, even though it wasn't to my liking. Obviously, we knew since the last chapter that Acnologia's dragon body was trapped in Fairy Sphere, and this is something that came back to bite us readers big time for a number of reasons. He is trapped in Fairy Sphere, and we see how he's struggling, trying to break the magic, and interestingly enough, he does make progress in that regard. Now, what is actually wrong here is that he shouldn't even be affected by Fairy Sphere in the first place. I remember very clearly that Acnologia cannot be affected by magic, and as far as I know at least, Fairy Sphere is a magic. However, as we all know, Acnologia must of course meet his end somehow, so I can see why they made this work. It's very convenient. In fact, that convenience extends even further, and let me explain what I mean by that. We see how Meredy comes in at one point and body links everybody to Lucy on the whole continent. Now, you see, this is where things don't quite add up. Granted, we don't know the true limit of her magic, but I find it extremely unlikely that Meredy can actually body link to that extent. It would take an insane amount of magic power to even pull it off, and Meredy is not that strong. I mean, she's an alright wizard, but I mean, that kind of magic power is like Spriggan level, if not higher, and she's nowhere near that level. And that's why I think this chapter was kinda broken. At least it's one of the problems. I am going to semi-contradict myself now, so be prepared for that. On the inside, where Natsu is preparing for his fight with Acnologia, things also went south, but for completely different reasons. As I said, Acnologia is immune to magic, but at the same time he has to be defeated somehow, right? Which is why I decided to not consider Natsu using all of the Dragon Slayer's magic bullshit. However, the battle still got fucked up pretty badly, because you see, Mashima could have easily done this better than he did. He decided to let Natsu one-shot Acnologia, and the way he did it was kinda clever, but at the same time really infuriating. He made it so that the outside and inside of Acnologia were in complete sync, meaning that Natsu only had to use one attack against Acnologia. So as we know, Natsu invoked the power of Kurama and did some Naruto arm extension stuff to make it look really cool and strong. This resulted in Acnologia's loss. But what's interesting about that is that Natsu's attack wasn't the only thing that led to Acnologia's defeat. Because if you pay close attention, Hiromashima wrote it so that Fairy Sphere would affect Acnologia's human body. This part I really like, it's a nice touch, but what I really don't like is how it ended with Natsu using just one attack in order to punch Acnologia to pieces. Literally. Let me tell you what I mean. The end of the fight I don't mind at all, but the fight needed to be extended much more. For instance, we wouldn't have needed all of the panels on the outside since Hiromashima intended to use convenience in favor of the humans anyway. And we should instead have had a longer fight between Acnologia and Natsu. Out of the 24 pages, we should have had maybe 4 pages on the outside and 20 of Natsu and Acnologia fighting. But we didn't. Instead, it was closer to a 50-50 balance, if not more on the outside, which kinda made it, oh, we're gonna have an epic dragon battle climax next chapter pointless, because that isn't really not what we got at all. All we had was a few people sharing magic to seal a dragon and Natsu one-shotting the Dragon King. I really hope the anime extends this, and pretty much every other fight that we've had this arc, well, some of the fights have had an alright length, but are pretty shit instead. But yeah, I hope you see what I'm getting at. There's no way anyone could consider this a good chapter, like, there's not a chance in the world. If you think this was good, something is seriously wrong. Anyway, so as I was saying, about Acnologia's human body being affected by Fairy Sphere, this is something that I really liked because it's one of the parts that made sense. It is just that it happened too quickly in my opinion. The fight should of course have been drawn out before it happened, since we did see Acnologia's body freeze in place the moment Fairy Sphere successfully locked in his dragon body. One of the other good things about this chapter, and this is where I may semi-contradict myself, was that we got to see some of the wizards we haven't seen for some time. Like pretty much people from every guild that we know were seen, and also we got to see Brandish and Dimaria again, which I really like, even if it was just briefly. At least Hero didn't forget about everyone else in the series. So next week we're getting the supposed final chapter of 48 pages, so that should be an epilogue, I imagine. I mean, I did kind of call it that we're getting a longer chapter for the finale, but it's only to be expected. So I am glad he did not decide to wrap it up in just 20 pages. And the final page of this chapter does say something like, the current era is ending, but a new one is just beginning, so that kinda hints towards a next generation, which you know how I feel about, so I am not going to go into that. Instead, I'll be ending the video right here, so let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for this review, but that's fair tarts for you. And as always, if you did, please like this video, if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I'll see you soon.